Welcome back. Standard Bank is working on plans to partner with its biggest shareholder, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, to capitalize on a Chinese investment drive into Ivory Coast and establish a regional hub in French-speaking West Africa. The Johannesburg-based lender, Africa's largest bank by assets, launched a new subsidiary aimed at corporate and investment banking clients last week. Ivory Coast, an agricultural commodities powerhouse and the world's largest cocoa producer, makes up around 40% of the economy of the eight-nation West African Economic and Monetary Union. A post-war economic boom there, driven by major infrastructure investments, is increasingly drawing the attention of China.
In the Ivory Coast, Chinese companies and the Chinese authorities have committed over $7.5 billion over the next few years to invest in infrastructure. And by virtue of our relationship with the ICBC, we think we're in a position to provide advice, structuring, and the capability to deploy the resources necessary to get involved in that infrastructure. So that deals with the Chinese question.
With a 20.1% stake, Standard Bank's largest shareholder is the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, ICBC. While the ICBC and other Chinese entries bring their own financing to projects in Africa, the deals offer opportunities for Standard Bank to mobilize financing for China's African partners. Standard Bank's businesses outside its home market in South Africa have tripled revenues from around 10 billion rand, or about $828 million in 2010, to over 27 billion rand last year, and now make up roughly a third of the group's headline earnings.
Côte d'Ivoire is growing at 7% and is likely to grow at around that rate for the next couple of years till 2020. And banks grow off the back of GDP growth, and therefore GDP, financial deepening, you've got the stock exchange here, therefore equity capital markets, and you've got developments in the debt capital markets.
Standard Bank already operates in 19 African markets, including Nigeria and Ghana in West Africa. The new bank in Côte d'Ivoire will serve as its hub in Ouémou, whose members use the euro-pegged CFA franc.
We have to start in the Ivory Coast. You can't, you've got to learn to walk before you run. And we've got enough opportunities here in the Ivory Coast. And then we've got clients in the region who will be able to serve us out of these operations. So we're not in a rush. We've got to establish ourselves here, build the infrastructure, build the product set, build the client base. And then as we grow, we will then lift our heads to see if we need to have installations in other parts of the region.
Ivory Coast's economy has boomed in the wake of a decade-long political crisis and a 2011 civil war, expanding by an average 9% between 2012 to 2016 and 7.8% last year, and that's according to the International Monetary Fund. An Egyptian farmer uses aquaponic fish tanks to fertilize produce as a cleaner alternative to traditional animal manure. Aquaponic farming can vary in size and complexity, but it's generally a system that uses fish waste to fertilize crops, which in turn filtrate the water used to farm the fish.
An Egyptian farmer is using recycled water circulated from fish farms to fertilize plants in an attempt to make use of the latest farming technology and reduce water consumption. The method is known as aquaponic farming, a system that uses fish waste to fertilize crops, which in turn filtrates the water used to farm the fish. Aquaponics is similar to hydroponics, which is farming in water instead of soil. But in a hydroponic system, a farmer would add into the water the nutrients that the plants need. In aquaponics, those nutrients are produced by fish.
We had carried out research, it's old, it's not very new, and was many years ago, on the shortage of water and how all the coming conflicts and wars will revolve around water. The world's population is increasing and food needs will increase, while water is not increasing at the same rate. On the contrary, it's decreasing due to climate change. This information has been known for a while now.
Hagag's farm has different fish for each plant product. Every cubic meter in his farm is filled with 22 different kinds of plants and served by 130 fish. The risk of food insecurity in the Middle East is rising as water shortages worsen and traditional farming becomes more difficult.
I consume between 8 and 14 cubic meters of water a month compared to traditional farming. In one fidan, roughly an acre, 18,000 lettuce plants use 60 cubic meters of water every 3 days. That's 60 cubic meters every 3 days. I consume 14 or even, let's say, 20 cubic meters of water in a whole month in the same surface area.
Egypt is currently locked in a dispute with Ethiopia concerning the building of a dam on the River Nile. The Egyptian government fears the hydroelectric scheme will restrict the waters flowing down from Ethiopia's highlands through the deserts of Sudan to its fields. Countries that share the Nile have argued over the use of its waters for decades, and analysts have repeatedly warned that the dispute could eventually boil over into conflict. Hagag knows this all too well and expects conflicts in the future to revolve around water. He says that compared to traditional farming, the aquaponic farm saves 95% of the water used in the same surface area. On a small scale, some Egyptians have switched to hydroponic farms, but aquaponic farms are still rare.
Nigeria is hosting a one-week Airports Council International Africa 2018 conference in Lagos with a focus on business transformation for sustainable development of African airports. The conference looks to discuss business models for African airports, investing in upgraded infrastructure, capacity, service improvements, among other issues. 153 members of the Airports Council International operate 1,953 airports in 176 countries. There are 62 members in Africa from 47 countries, managing 250 airports. Algeria's Prime Minister Ahmed Ould Yahya is optimistic that his country's economy will improve this year as revenue from the oil and natural gas export picks up after falling by half since 2014. Mr. Ould Yahya admits 2017 was a difficult year, but he sees a brighter 2018. Official data shows oil and natural gas exports increased 25% to $7.1 billion in the first 2 months of 2018, up from $5.67 billion in the same period a year earlier. And that's our program today. Thank you for watching. I am Bisi Adebayo.